This is Advanced Math, Unit 1, Lesson 1, that's 1.1. The title is Factoring. We're going to factor completely. I'm going to start off with number 1, which is 27y squared x minus 3x to the third. So whenever you factor, I would suggest always looking for a GCF first. Even if there isn't a GCF, check it. Even if it looks like, oh, I can do difference of two squares, or I can trinomial factor, check if there's a GCF first. And there is here. There's a 3 that's in common, so I'm going to factor out a 3. They do not both have a y, but they both have an x. This is x to the first. This is x cubed. The most they have in common is one of them, so just 3x is your GCF. 3 times what is 27? That is 9. And since there is no y squared here, I'm going to need the y squared, and the x is already taken care of, so it's just the y squared. 3x times 9y squared is 27y squared x. Minus 3 times what is 3? That's going to be 1. You don't have to put the 1 there, you can. X times what is x to the third? That's going to be x squared, and there's no y there, so that is it. Now if you stop here, there's a possibility you might get it wrong, because look here, this is a difference of two squares. I'm going to just put it dots. Difference of two squares. If you'll forget what dots means, put pause and write that down. Difference of two squares. So 3x double bubble. You remember for Math 2 as well as Math 3, difference of two squares is when there's two terms, they're both perfect squares, and there's a minus sign. And there's two terms. They're both perfect squares, and there's a minus sign. What's the square root of 9y squared? 3y. And difference of two squares always has a plus and a minus, or minus plus, doesn't matter. And the square root of x squared is x. And one last check, is there anything else that I can factor? There is not. This is your final answer. So suggestions, always first check if there's a GCF, and at the end ask yourself, can I still factor? Okay, number 2, 36 minus y squared. So you ask yourself, is there a GCF? No, there's nothing in common. There's two terms, so there's no trinomial factoring, and it does look like a difference of two squares again, because they're two terms, they're both perfect squares, and there's a minus sign. Okay, if that had been a plus sign, you'd put not factorable. But since it's a minus sign, you can factor double bubble. And the square root of 36 is 6. The square root of y squared is y, and it's always plus minus or minus plus. You'll want to be careful with this, because a common mistake kids make is out of habit they do this. They're like, oh, y plus 6, y minus 6. It doesn't matter that it's backwards. I'm used to the variable coming first. That is wrong. So be careful. If it's backwards, then you factor it backwards. The 6 comes before the y because the 36 came before the y squared. Okay, number 3, x squared minus 11x minus 60. First thing we look for is a GCF, and there is not a GCF, so I'm going to go through and factor. And I'm going to double bubble because it looks like a trinomial factoring. My leading coefficient's 1, and it's nice when it's 1 because the only possibilities for 1 are 1 and 1. So 1x and 1x is just x and x. My last number is 60. Now you don't have to list all the factors of 60. I'm going to list a few of them here. Sorry, going too fast. Okay, actually I'm going to list all of them. Now you don't have to do this. I'm doing it just as a precautionary, because sometimes if you can factor in your head and you're really good at factoring, you may not have to do this. You can think of the numbers in your head, put them down, and you're good. If you're a little shaky on factoring, you're going to want to do this because it's going to help you figure out which set to use. And sometimes it's not the most common number, like you're thinking 60, oh, 6 and 10, and it doesn't always work with the most common numbers. So you do want to list them to see which ones are going to add up to 11. Now, because my last sign is negative, that means my two signs have to be different. One is positive and one is negative. So if one of these numbers is positive and one's negative, which one's going to add up to a negative 11? That would be this one here. Now I want it to be a negative 11, so that's going to be positive 4 and negative 15. Now you learned in previous math classes how to check this. Now this check work, some of you will do in your head. I'm going to show the check work here. The inside is 4x, the outside is negative 15x. Add them together, you get negative 11x, and sure enough, that's what you have in the middle. We're super happy that we have the right answer, and we box it in. Okay, let's try another one. Number 4, 6x squared minus xy minus 77y squared. Okay. GCF, there is no GCF. It looks like there's an x and a y, but this does not have a y, that does not have an x, so xy is not part of your GCF. It's not a difference of two squares because there's 3 terms, so we're going to do the same as we did here, trinomial guess and check. Now on this one, our leading coefficient is not 1, it is 6, so it's going to be a little extra work. The factors of 6 are 1 and 6 and 2 and 3. Now when you start it, it doesn't matter which one you use first, the 1 and the 6 or the 2 and the 3. That's part of the checking that you have to do. I'm going to list the factors of 77, 1 and 77, and 7 and 11. And some things I can take a look at. This last sign's negative, which means my 2 signs are going to be different. If it was plus, then my 2 signs would be the same. Okay, so I am going to go through and factor. Let's see, do we want to use 1 and 6? Do we want to use 2 and 3? That's part of the guessing and the checking. You don't know until you try it. So hit pause and try a few, but you have quite a few combinations because you can try 1, 6 with the 1 and 77, or the 1, 6 with the 7 and the 1, or you can try the 2, 3 with the 1 and 77, or the 2, 3 with the 7 and 11, and it all depends on how you put the numbers as well. For example, I'm going to choose 2, 3, 2x and 3x, and I know my signs are different because of the last one's negative. Now I'm just going to throw it in there, minus, plus. It may not be right, but I can fix it at the end. Okay, now why do I know the 2 signs are different? Because the only way to multiply to a negative 77 is if these two signs are not the same. Okay, now I'm going to guess 711 only because the 177 seems way too big and I'm trying to get a negative 1 in the middle. Okay, so I'm just going to throw numbers in there. Now this part here, you may get better. Some of you are going to be really good at factoring, some of you are going to take some time, but we do factor a lot in this class, so you want to make sure you become very comfortable with it. Okay, so let's check it. Negative 33x positive 14x, that does not add up to negative 1x, so this is not the right answer. Now, changing my positive and negative signs is not going to change this. It's still not going to work because it's just going to give me the opposite of whatever that number is there. So let's try another, 2x and 3x. I'm not going to give up on the 711. I'm still going to try it, minus, plus. I'm just going to flip-flop the numbers and see if it works that way. Okay, so do the check really quick and see if that works. Negative 21x, positive 22x, and that adds up to positive 1x. Oh, I'm very close. I want a negative 1x and I got a positive 1x. That's an easy fix. Do you guys know what to do? Sure enough, you flip-flop those signs. I'm going to make this one, oh, could have just added that plus sign. I'm going to make this one a minus sign. Let's check it. Positive 21, negative 22, add those together, that's negative 1. That's what we're trying to get in the middle. That is the right answer. Again, this one didn't work because we got negative 19x in the middle, and if you had made that plus and that minus, the only thing that would change is that becoming a positive 19. So that's why this did not work. Now, if this didn't work either, we would scrap the 2, 3 and then try the 1, 6 with all the combinations. So it does take some time, but the more you do, I'm sure when you first learn this in Math 2, you have made progress and it become better. The more you do, the better you become. Okay, next one. 9x to the 4th minus 13x squared plus 4. It's getting kind of messy with all those numbers, so I'll just do that. Okay. Not difference of two squares. Oh, GCF. There is no GCF. It's not difference of two squares because there's two terms. And it's trinomial guess and check. Factors of 9 are 1 and 9, 3 and 3. Factors of 4 are 1 and 4, 2 and 2. Now, because my last sign is positive, my two signs are going to be the same. So they're going to be, I look at my neighbor tells me they're both negative. Why? Because a negative times a negative is a positive. Okay, a positive times a positive is positive as well. I know they're both negative though because the negative in the middle. Okay, now my instinct is to try 3, 3, and 2, 2. It doesn't work, that's just my instinct, so I'm going to use it. 3x, 3x, 2, and 2. Now there is one mistake because 3x times 3x is not 9x to the 4th. I do need to make those squared there. And let's test it. 3x squared times 3x squared is 9x to the 4th. Negative 2 times negative 2 is indeed positive 4. Negative 6x squared, negative 6x squared. Unfortunately, that does not work. Bummer. Okay, that's fine. I'm scratch. Now, when you're doing your work, you don't have to scratch it the way I am here. You can just erase it. I'm just leaving that there for work purposes. When you're checking, you can see what is going on in the process we're going through. Okay, so let's try, there's a variety of combinations. I'm going to try 9 and 1, 9x and 1x. Now I'm trying to get negative 13 in the middle. So you can try in your head, like put 1, 4 and do a quick check and see if it works. I can see that's not going to work because that's going to be 36 and 1. What about a 4 and a 1? Is that going to work? No, it's not because that's going to be 9 and 4. Okay, let's try the 2 and the 2. And the 2 and the 2, it doesn't matter because they're both 2 how you put them in. Let's see if that's going to work. That's 18 and that is 2. Still not going to work. Okay, so I'm still not going to give up on the 9 and 1. I'm still going to try it, but now with the 4, 1. Now, I believe I tried it earlier. I did 1, 4, and I said 36 and 1, and it didn't work. But what did I not do that I should have done? Flipped it. Now, that is something I was going too fast, and I shouldn't have. But you could flip it, 4, 1, and see if it works that way. All right? Let's see. Negative 4x, negative 9x. That adds up to negative 13x. And these should be squared and squared. So that comes out to a squared. And that there is your answer. Just don't forget the squares. Everything else works the same, but that little part at the end can get you. Okay, last one, number 6. Is 10 minus x minus 3x squared. Okay, some kids prefer to factor backwards, some kids prefer to rearrange. I'm going to rearrange, but if you want to see the leaving it as it is and factoring, you can ask me, or if you know how to do it, that's fine. Rearrange. Negative 3x squared minus x plus 10. Negative 3x squared minus x plus 10. And I'm going to factor with the negative because I do not want to factor with the leading coefficient being negative, which changes all my signs, and then I'm ready to just double bubble. 3 is prime, so it's going to be 3x and x. 10, I can use 1 and 10 or 2 and 5. I'm going to try 2 and 5, and I'm going to try the 5 here, the 2 here. My last sign is negative, which means my two signs are different. I'm going to quickly just throw it in there and check. Positive 5, negative 6, that my sign's going to be off, so I'm going to change this to a negative 5, positive 2, negative 5x, positive 6x, indeed gives, Okay, indeed gives you the positive 1x, which is what we're trying to get right there, positive 1x. So this here is the answer. And that is it for this lesson.